has to do with composting.
Okay, so we're also known as the Science League, and we've scanned on a lot of ideas, but we've narrowed it down to composting. And what is composting, you ask? Well, composting is basically just gathering all the organic materials such as grains, veggies, and leaves, and etc., and fertilizing them into the soil so that the nutrients can be given to the soil rather than chemicals and such.
Well, the effects on the environment would be, well, it would reduce landfills and it would return biodegradable materials back into the soil from plants. And
Well, since there isn't much of an organization or projects here in Beaverton on composting, we've decided to make one here at BHS2 to expand on our learning. Oh, and before we move on, the question is, what factors influence the rate of composting and the ion content of the compost produced?
So we predicted that worms and higher temperature will increase the rate of decomposition. We believe this because the worms will eat the natural material and compost it better.
We also predicted that the grains and putting it under cover would also slower the decomposition because grains will be harder to break down.
So for the methods, we decided to use 3 2-liter sodas to build the eco columns. We used duct tape, coffee filters, soil, veggies, grains, and fruits, and boiling liquids. So the variables were fruits, veggies, some with or without grains. For the decomposers, some had worms and others were without worms. Exposure was that some were shaded and some were unshaded, and so we came up with 8 different conditions. Some of them were shade. Some of them had shade, worms, fruits and veggies, shade, worms, fruits, vegetables, and grains. Others were shaded, no worms, fruits, and vegetables. Another one was shade, no worms, fruits, vegetables, and fruits.
So the observations we have so far are that the soils became more moist due to the humidity buildup inside of the eco columns with the worms and the vegetables and soil. And the soil has decreased in height due to the fact that the worms are eating down and the vegetables are starting to become more decreased.
So we had many observations, such as also the odor had increased, and one of them was also that the eco columns that had the bread actually had an increased amount of mold comparing to the ones that didn't have bread. And some of them where soil seems to have lost its volume and soil and this goes back into the moist soil. And the other one is smell has increased and becomes stronger every time.
There was an accumulation of the water in some of the biodiversity columns, and then the nitrogen. Like we had to test like phosphorus, nitrogen, and even test, and we had saw that the nitrogen had been depleted most times, and basically all of the columns.
So our project was really to kind of create awareness of the benefits of composting. And one of the big things that we have seen is that major corporations have they produce mass products, and by doing that they take away all the nutrients in the soil, and that later on
want to do is to encourage other people to compost. Maybe they can start themselves, like maybe like having a composting system in their own home in their garden, and it will like is a potential benefit. And we want to get local communities to start composting because like some of us in Senator Group, there's not much composting around here,
So some of the things we've learned that when you add grains, there's a lot more mold, and the type of mold changes. So when there's normal breakdown, there already is mold, but when you add grains, it gets to be like kind of a white fuzz versus like a green and flat.
Another thing we noticed is that the sun, water, and worms tend to skip decomposition, and we're basing this off of the fact that the sun's heat is able to help the decomposition break down, as long as the worms are also eating the particles and breaking them down and putting them back into fertilizer as well back into the compost.
So when we did this project, we also learned a little bit about plant structure. So we learned something called phloem. It's a living tissue towards the middle of the plant, and that's responsible for sugar transport to get sugars and energy all around the plant.
Along with the phloem, there's a xylem that is a unit also within the plant, and the xylem transports water throughout the plant as well.
We also learned the essential kind of like vitamins for plants, you could say. So potassium, nitrogen, and phosphorus are huge factors, and they all have different parts. So potassium is responsible for keeping water pressure stable within the plant. Nitrogen is used in making different types of proteins and amino acids to, keep the plant alive and make more new tissues. And phosphorus is used in making something called ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, which is your energy currency for a lot of different living organisms. The other factor in plant growth is pH, which is actually used like if you have something and it's too acidic in a plant, then certain compounds can't form, certain proteins can't be made. That's why if you try to drown a plant in acid, it'll die because it can't make enough different kinds of compounds that it needs.
So we didn't only just learn about scientific things, we also learned about the learning process, and in this case we created criteria for a project. So our criteria was that we wanted a hands-on, simple, easy project, etc. So we applied that into the projects that we wanted to make it achievable. So in this case, with our limits, we had limited time, limited resources, limited money. So using that criteria, we helped choose our projects.
The other thing we did, we had to learn how to test the soil, because you have to measure how you're gonna understand the differences in your ecosystems. So we tested potassium, nitrogen, pH, and phosphorus levels in all of our different columns to compare which factors made composting work better. And the way you test soils, you'll have little color indicators and take a small sample of your soil and your water, and then you just add the color indicator, and there's a scale, and it tells you, oh, it's 7, so the pH is neutral. Everything's working.
So back to the learning process, we learned how to brainstorm project ideas. So in this case, we made a whole list of projects that we wanted to try out. And originally, before composting, we wanted to start a water recycling system in our school, but we didn't have limited time and resources for that, so we moved on to composting. And then with composting, we decided which variables we wanted to test, such as worms and grains, fruits and vegetables, the sun, so we could see the differences in how to get the best compost that you could get to put back into your soil.
One of the other awesome parts about this project is that because we learned about the different essential elements and the different parts of a plant, we can apply that to what we see. So we can apply, oh, well, there's no nitrogen. Well, then the plant's going to start to die. All those things can factor into your observations, and it'll actually make sense, and you'll learn a lot.
So lastly, we've learned that science doesn't always work the way you expect it to. So in this case, we had a lot of uncontrolled variables, such as the weather. We can't help if it's sunny all in one week and all of a sudden it snows the next week and it affects the plants and the compost. So we always, keep that in mind that science is unpredictable.
Now, given the opportunity to attempt this project again, things we would do differently include focusing on the accuracy and the precision of how we attempted to collect our data. For example, if we were able to, we would focus on keeping as many variables as we could constant. This would ensure maximum credibility while keeping. Sorry, I'm nervous. This would ensure maximum credibility while minimizing any potential errors within the data we would have collected.
Another way we could improve this by having more samples. Like currently we had like one decomposition column for like each way someone could, you know, I forgot the word already. For each condition. So like having multiple of each type of column, we could make a mean, you know, like a mean for out of the samples and have like more accurate results.
Another thing that we could do is add more materials to decompose, such as cardboard, raw meat, salt, and sugar. This would probably make sure that food probably hinder the rate of decomposition or add on to it, and other variables that we haven't really tested yet. Any questions?
I was just going to ask, are you guys implementing this into your school?
That's our plan.
Yeah. Kind of going forward to.
Yeah. Well, my question is kind of related to this. How will you deliver this to the community?
Can I say something? Yeah. Okay. So we have an elementary school near our school, and actually one of our instructors' mothers, right? Someone's mother works there.
Yeah.
And then we're going to introduce this the composting with the children. And we're going to try to teach them how to do their own composting. We're also going to talk about our own school and show kids and have our own website or our own little page on the school website so that people would notice and see that we're actually doing a composting thing, and we want to introduce it to our community. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
What are your names?
I'm Josh.
My name's Nicole.
Yeah, I'm Brian.
I'm Jordan.
I'm Sebastian.
I'm German.
I'm Esther.
My name's Jacqueline.
My name is Midget.
My name is Mateus.
I'm Claudia.
I'm Nancy.
My name's David.
I'm Ashley.